Hi, I'm Boris Blade. I'm the host of Strange But Harmless. I loved Christmas as a child, but then again, who didn't? I know. There are poor, unfortunate people who believe they can't afford Christmas. I say bah humbug to that. Christmas is not all about presents, parties, booze, and food, although it wouldn't be the same without them. Come on, you were thinking the same thing. The heart of Christmas is, of course, celebrating the birth of the Christ child. Even though we don't know exactly when that was, we celebrate it on December 25th. This date was decided on around 300 years after Jesus lived. It was chosen by early Christian leaders because it matched closely with the Roman holidays, making it easier for the masses to cross over to the new religion. Plus, being right after the winter solstice, it gave a symbolic meaning. The light of the world, the Christ child, came just as light was returning to the world. It also helped unify the church. I remember as a small child the thrill and excitement of getting up on Christmas morning, standing by the bedroom door, waiting to be called downstairs for the big day, looking over to the bedroom that my two older brothers shared, laughing as they pushed and nudged each other, occasionally slapping one another. We were given explicit instructions: do not go downstairs until Mom or Dad called us down. We never tested to see what would happen if we disobeyed. It just wasn't worth the risk. Now, Dad wasn't one to push when it came to stuff like this. I'm not saying that Dad was belt happy, just the opposite. When Dad said that whipping us hurt him as much as it did us, I believed it. More than once I saw tears running down that man's face as he said it. He really hated to whip us, but he knew it was for our own good. I'm the first to admit I'm a better person for it. That and the fanatical Christian upbringing. With all the weird shit that I saw and experienced as a child, I hate to think how I would have ended up otherwise. Back to Xmas. Oh my God, when that hit the media, Dad went ballistic. They're trying to take Christ out of Christmas. Oh, if we were caught saying Xmas, we got the look and a firm remark from Dad. It wasn't until years after Dad passed that I found out the true meaning of Xmas. Hell, it had been used as abbreviation for Christ since 4th century Greece. The letter X resembles the first letter of the Greek word for Christ. It has been used as a sacred abbreviation for centuries. Mom and Dad always put out a big spread for Christmas. The dining room table would be so chock full of food you could barely find room to put your elbows on the table to eat. They always had a huge selection of everything you could think of for that time period to make hoagies, because hoagies were a treat in our house, reserved for holidays and vacations. Yep, each year as we drove to Virginia to visit Grandma on the farm for 2 weeks, which was our family vacation each year, we stopped at Kmart in Charleston, West Virginia, right before we got on the turnpike. The old Kmarts not only had a lunch counter, more like a mini cafeteria at the back of the store, but they had a small kiosk that sold sandwiches at the front of the store in the main aisle. It was one of the first things you saw when you walked in. Every year, Mom and Dad would buy everyone a sub sandwich. They always had mustard and ketchup and mayonnaise in the cooler they packed for the trip, along with pickles. For some reason, they always brought pickles. That's probably why I love them so much. Now, I don't eat them that often, but they still hold a special place in my stomach. You thought I was going to say heart, didn't you? Now, I don't remember eating breakfast on Christmas morning. I'm not saying we didn't, but I just don't remember it. But lunch is when the real eating started. The table would already be set, everyone would sit and wait for Dad to say grace, then we would tear into the food like hungry young wolves getting their first taste of a fresh kill, only without the bloody mess, of course. Well, the roast beef was a little redder than I liked. After everyone had finished, Mom would remove the perishables, like mayo and the sides. Then Dad would cover the table with a bed sheet so we could visit it whenever we got hungry, just like we did on Thanksgiving. Later in the evening, as you lie awake in bed, oops, there goes that autoplay switch again. Sorry. Mom and Dad would herd us all back to the table for an evening meal to make sure none of us went to bed hungry. For some reason, that was a big deal for Dad. I don't want any of you kids to go to bed hungry. Not just at Christmas, but any time. Now back to Christmas morning. When called, we would tear off down the steps like a herd of buffalo. Dad would be yelling, "Don't race down those steps!" Like that's going to stop 4 excited kids from running at breakneck speeds down the steps on Christmas morning. Under the tree would be filled with gifts for us kids. The tree itself looked pretty much the same each year. We had our traditional decorations, bubble lights, strings of large glass bulbs, glass ornaments. Of course, back then they were all glass. Little clip-on birds, peacocks, I believe, if the colorful tail feathers could be a clue. These were from Grandma, Dad's mom, and they were very old. Garland, not only red, green, and gold, but blue, Where the hell did Dad find blue garland for a Christmas tree? Sorry about that. I had to take a break for life. Yeah, I had to go work my 8 hours. 65 years old and still climbing that hill. All right, well, I'm getting back to it now. Let's see. Sorry about that. Where did Dad find that blue garland for the Christmas tree? Well, then there was the tinsel. Us kids hated the tinsel. Dad was meticulous with the placement of each strand. He literally, and I know what that word means, put 1 or 2 strands on at a time. Us kids, we'd be throwing that shit up there in clumps, all willy-nilly, knowing good and well that Dad had come behind us and fix it. After Christmas, when we took the tree down, Dad had us pick every single piece of tinsel off the tree because it's an artificial tree and I want it ready for next year. At some point, he started saving it for next year. That didn't last long, just long enough for Dad to realize it wasn't worth the trouble, just to save $1. Literally. It was $0.25 a box, and he always bought 4 boxes. Dad liked a ton of that shit on the tree every year. But why not? He didn't have to pick it off. Every year we had one of those tree lights, with the bright floodlight shining through a spinning colored wheel, throwing colored light on the tree. As a child, it was really cool, too. Now, about the presents. Mom and Dad weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but they always made Christmas as good as they could. Every year, each one of us kids had at least one big item under the tree, or beside it if necessary. These stories are in no particular order. Some years stick out more than others. One year, my little sister just had to have the new Baby Tenderlove doll. She made such a fuss there was no way Mom and Dad couldn't get it for her. When she opened it on Christmas morning, she was so excited, tears of joy running down her face, until it happened. Well, I happened. My sister said something about losing it or it getting stolen, so I told her if she was worried, write her name on it. She got in so much trouble. Dad spanked her, Mom yelled at her, my brothers laughed at her. Those tears of joy were soon replaced by tears of pain. Hey, I didn't tell her to write her name on the forehead or down the nose right between the eyes. That was all her. One year, I almost burned down the house, according to Dad. I had gotten a stupid flashcard set of some sort. I took them in the kitchen to hide them. I set the box on top of the toaster. I still to this day don't know what compelled me to push both sides of the toaster down as I walked out. When Dad smelled smoke and went in to check on it, he was livid. You almost burned down the house. What were you thinking? Of course, as usual, I had no answer. When I was about 8, Mom and Dad got me the most incredible toy. Nay, not just one, but 2. They were large metal play sets that resembled big suitcases. Fort Apache was one of them. It opened out into a western fort with horses, soldiers, and Indians. It had all kinds of cannons and wagons and other accessories. The other was Cape Canaveral. It was a NASA base with a rocket launch pad that actually launched the rockets. Well, it shot them about 2 foot in the air. And all kinds of neat stuff I had no idea what to do with. But it was fun. One year, sometime after this, I got these cool as fuck moon shoes. I've tried to find them online several times to no avail. They had metal plates hooked together with hinges and springs. They were heavy and cumbersome. No one wanted to play with them. Then one day when I was around 12, I put them on and climbed to the very top of our big maple tree in the backyard. Now, I was an expert at climbing this tree. It was as tall as our 2-story house. When I was around 8 years old, I learned to climb it. By the time I was 10, I could climb it in less than 20 seconds, as counted in my head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. At 12, I needed another challenging aspect to the climb, thus the moon shoes. Up was a struggle, but at least I could see my foot placement. With these anchors on my feet, I couldn't use my usual footholds. It was indeed challenging, to say the least. When did I ever say the least? I didn't dare try to climb back down with them on. That would have been mere suicide. Not that anyone would have noticed. So I dropped them from the top of the tree and watched them bounce around like demented pinballs in a weird wooden machine. One year, my brothers and I got new bikes for Christmas. Well, they got bikes. Mine was this little thing with 12-inch solid rubber tires. It had a weird-looking set of forks and handlebars that looked like something from outer space, and not in a good way. I actually tried to ride it a couple times. I, of course, got laughed at. All the neighborhood kids took turns trying to ride it. It sucked. I threw such a fit that when my oldest brother started driving that year, his bike went to my middle brother, and I got his old one, which was only a few years old. But, me being me, I wanted something better. They had come out with 10-speed bikes by then. Cool-looking touring-style bikes with slim road tires and handlebars that curled under. Real racing bikes. Everyone wanted one. I kept it up until I got one for Christmas that year. I was the first one on the street to get one. Of course, that was mostly because everyone else was still cruising their banana bikes, of which I never got one. One kid, my rival, one street over, got his 10-speed a couple of months before me. May the fleas of 1,000 camels infest his armpits, and those of his dependents. Then there was the dreaded strike year. The B&W had gone on strike and they hadn't settled on a new contract by Christmas. Things were tight, but seemed normal to us kids. Until Christmas morning, that is. I was around 16 maybe. Every present I got that year was socks. It was funny at first, everyone laughing hysterically every time I unwrapped more socks. Mom and Dad had gone out of their way to hide what was inside. They did too good of a job. No one to this day knows that I went off by myself to cry for about an hour while the others were playing with their meager toys. Well, now you do. At least they got toys that year. Mom and Dad felt real bad. They had inadvertently given my toys to the others. Of course it was a mistake. We all got clothes for Christmas that year. Back-to-school shopping was early. The credit union had given out vouchers for families with kids. They paid for school clothes. I don't know why they gave them out at Christmas. School was already back in session. One year, when I was in my 20s, this was a few years after Dad had passed and Mom had remarried, they got me a tube. It was about 2 foot long, and as big around as a large roll of wrapping paper. It felt like it weighed about 20 pounds. They had used a whole roll of gift wrap on it. It literally took me 20 minutes to unwrap it. When it was all said and done, I was looking at a pile of change, quarters on down. It took me another hour and a half just to sort and count it. OCD me. $80 and change. $80 in change? You know what I mean. I was happy as a lark, all the way to my dope dealer, where I bought my first ever ounce of Christmas weed. I try to do something special each year. I like to save some buds from different bags all year long so I can mix and match them at Christmas time. I won't get into my Christmas partying years, at least not now. Hey, if I'm still around next year, maybe I'll write them up for the podcast. Nowadays, my wife and I have very low-key Christmases. Early on in our life of bliss together, we moved to West Virginia. That's a story in and of itself. We didn't have much money. We used garland, lights, the mini ones, and tape to put up a Christmas tree-shaped monstrosity on the wall. Well, no, it was really cute as hell. We taped ornaments to it also. Thank God most of them were plastic. We spent a lot of time and energy that year putting them back on the wall after they fell off, every one at least once. And a couple of them were actually glass, and they broke. We had to grab them before the dog got to them. Miss you, Gizmo. We always try to give each other a nice Christmas. Once we had a good bingo year and had saved it for Christmas. Yeah, in late December I hit a full card and split it with one old lady. I got a cool $950. So we had $400 to spend on each other. This was in the midst of the early Black Friday days. I got a new computer and monitor and a bunch of other stuff. My wife got socks and a bunch of other stuff. She has always wanted a bunch of gifts. She doesn't care how nice they are. She just wants to have a plethora of gifts to open. She's told me before. A couple of years ago, I had an idea. Here we go again. At this point, 95% of our Christmas shopping was done online. So I suggested we didn't wrap anything. We just left them in what they came in and put them under the tree. Since we only have one account at each store's website, all packages came to the same person. On Christmas, we each would just tear a corner open, just enough to see if it was something you bought for the other person. If it wasn't, you tore that bitch open. Well, this is kicking off my Christmas series. My next post will be about Dad's company Christmas parties. Then from there, Santa stories on the road.